from my logo here, we have a vested interest in telling you to seek counsel, but this should be a pretty good guide, at least to make you feel a little bit more comfortable. I'll just start out by saying I am a musician myself, in addition to being a writer. I'm in a band, and I've gotten to know many folks who are trying to do the entrepreneur thing at the same time, and I've seen how much burnout it can cause. Um, Now, I'm not saying that you can do this in a way that doesn't cause burnout. I would just say, even though it's kind of a square thing to say, you should seek counsel. That's just a disclaimer. But if you are in a pinch, at least you'll feel like you know more, and when you do seek counsel, you'll have the right questions to ask. So just gonna get going now, and there's a little bit of video with no sound. This was actually Molly, no, just kidding. Somebody playing guitar. We're calling it Law and Creative Hustle, a legal survival guide for artists, musicians, and makers. It's an honor to be able to give this presentation, and thanks to Law at the Library program and to the CBA. I really appreciate it, and hopefully this is enjoyable for everyone. This is a lot of guitar playing here. Next slide here. Okay, so why this matters. Um, if you were in real estate, you would be focused on acquiring property, like let's say Wacker in Michigan building or something, and that would be your nest egg maybe, and you would be hiring property managers, etc. But you might not be thinking about it right now, but your creative talents are just like real property, except it's intellectual property, and the right set of people around you can, just like for real estate investment, can really boost your brand, your curb appeal, so to speak, and most importantly, protect what you've built. And I don't need to go into too much detail about this. You all know of, the horror stories of what can happen with bands or, artists with theft of intellectual property. So the time is now to start thinking about it. Sorry for the noise. Um, they just announced the winning team at this contest we're at. Um, anyway, it's not too late or too soon to start thinking about this stuff. So I was talking earlier about Synchronicity from the Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. So I would say that 99% of what I learned in law school is stuff that's not something that's conducive to creativity. But I think from being someone who's like been in artistic rooms and then not as artistic rooms, I can tell people's energy, I guess, when they know what they're doing. So it's taken a lot of practice, and I'm not trying to say that I'm an expert at all. But I just know when to ask for help, I guess. So um, definitely keep this mindset, if nothing else from this presentation. Just know that your brand is worth protecting, and you can call people who know what to do. Okay, so I'm gonna briefly do a law school thing, and Molly's gonna help out with trademark. So copyright, I'm gonna talk about copyright and trademark, not gonna talk about patent law, for good reason. Copyright protects original works of authorship, music, art, writing, choreography, and interestingly, choreography, but not like the dance itself, because it has to be fixed in a tangible medium. There could be a long discussion about this, but we don't have enough time. You get it automatically when you fix something in a tangible medium, like you just have the copyright, but that doesn't mean anything unless it's really federally registered. And the duration of a copyright is the life of the author plus 70 years, asterisk, because I'm a lawyer. Um, Now, trademark, I'm just going to defer to Molly briefly about maybe what is the difference between a trademark and a copyright.
Yeah, for sure. So copyright's going to refer to like the actual subject matter that you're putting out there. You're making music, you're making movies, you're doing art, that is the copyright you get for that actual item. Versus trademarks is going to protect the brand that you develop. And so trademarks gets at that source identifier. So it lets consumers know, hey, what I'm buying comes from this source, and I can verify that because their branding's on it. It also helps you as the brand owner to develop goodwill and ensure that no one else is using a similar trademark and producing bad and subpar items that you wouldn't want associated with your brand. So this is important if you're, get hired to produce something. You can have a branding. You can, get the word out that you're making this, art piece, and you commission art, and this is your branding, and you can ensure that everyone knows that it's you and not someone else that could be pretending to be you. You can get a trademark by building up like consumer awareness of your brand, and you can file it. You can also file it with the intent to use it in commerce. So a big thing about trademark is you have to be using it in connection with your sale of your goods. And so trademarks are just a good way to, on the side of copyright is going to be probably first and foremost, but trademarks can also help with branding and getting your name out there.
Right, awesome. Thanks, Molly. And yeah, so you've seen it before. I think it's the next slide. Yeah, so you see this TM or SM. So SM is for a service and TM is for a good. So like believe it or not, like United Airlines, I think if you well they have registered it anyway, registered service mark. But like airline services are a service and not a good. But United Airlines, the identifier of their brand is a service mark, like the logo and whatnot. Um, but for goods, let's say, I don't know, Skechers, like they have shoes, so they'd be a trademark. Um, you can tell that the goods are coming from Skechers because of their logo. So that might be something to consider. If that's becoming a question, like when you're on the US PTO website, it'll ask you that right away. So if you have a question on that, call an attorney right away, I would say. So this is a real life example of how someone can navigate being an entrepreneur and then also drawing boundaries about use. So Robin Andrews, who I know, a great artist who lives in Glenview and writer. Robin's website shows her art and really nicely, and then also her prose and then poetry. And then if you see on the right side of the screen, Robin has put a little statement there of this is not for free use. You have to contact me and get permission if you want to reproduce it. And if you meet her, she'll tell you a story that somebody really appropriated her artwork one time, and it can happen to anyone in a way that's not flattering. So, and I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways too is I mean, what you make is unique and you need people around you to protect what you do. So again, you need to draw these boundaries, and if you think that it's possible to do it on your own, go ahead, you can, but in the best way possible, it's best to consult an attorney. And I would imagine Robin consulted an attorney on this. Okay, so how do you become an entrepreneur who has the best chance of succeeding and making money? Now, this isn't one of those types of classes, but I will say just from practical experience, a lot of people want, and myself included at the beginning, even though I'm an attorney, I wanted to just own the copyright right away for my band songs personally. And so I did that, and it was a mistake. It felt cool at the time, but then when I was doing a trademark, I set up an LLC to own the trademark, and that was a much smarter idea. It does require annual maintenance for um, the business in a way that just owning the copyright or trademark doesn't until a certain point. But it's definitely worth it to shield yourself from liability to the best extent. So don't do a sole proprietorship. That's what it is when you personally just own it. An LLC is a good way to go. We don't have time to really get into an S corp, but definitely helps a lot with licensure, which we'll get to. Now we're getting, I think we're out of 101 now, and now we're in the 200 level. All right. So I had a great professor at Kent, Scott Curran, and I'm going directly to the NDA here. He provided a template for us. I think this was my second year of law school, and he was like, "You never know when you're going to need this. A client might come to you, a family member, and they're like, 'I'm starting a business. What should I do?' And any good business will need an NDA, because again, it's your brand. What you're creatively producing needs to be protected. So a non-disclosure agreement is great to have handy. It shouldn't be too long and intimidating, but it should be forceful enough that people respect. Okay, like Molly's business. I'm not going to give away Molly's trade secrets because she's got this nice NDA, but it doesn't seem like it's too much of a burden to sign. Um, Also, you can get into like, let's say your band is doing, I don't know, some studio time and there's an engineer. You can get, for example, the engineer to waive any copyright. That's something that I've done recently. And the guy actually agreed to it. So that was kind of a, when you're in the creative world, it's a little bit tough sometimes of bringing in pieces of paper. So you might want to work these things out orally and then connect off, out of the creative zone and draw boundaries. But it is really important to set up, you know, forceful yet also a little bit flexible relationships. Um, People will respect them, and they respect that you as a creative are looking out for your best interest. Yeah, so we don't really have time to get into the other agreements, but there's just kind of a toolkit that you can have that shows off your know-how, and then it's kind of just like badges that you've been around. Okay, so AI. Well, we don't have that much time left, but I definitely wanted to talk about AI a bit. So this is actually the work, or is it the work of someone that I know? Okay, so I studied this in law school, and then Professor Edward Lee from Kent, who's now at Santa Clara, and I have kept in touch. And this Zaraya of the Dawn thing has been extremely interesting. And now the person who did the prompts for it works for Adobe, and her name is Chris Castanova. And I follow her on LinkedIn, and she makes really good prompts. Um, Not that I necessarily support AI, I just think that sometimes it's done better than others. So this book was made in Midjourney, and the Copyright Office rejected Chris's application to copyright it, saying, "No, Chris, you're not the author of this. AI is the author of it. Therefore, you cannot have a copyright, even though you made the prompts." So this is a map that Professor Lee did of like all the different copyright lawsuits about AI right now. I think this is the most recent one. He tags me, if you're watching this, Professor Lee, thank you for tagging me. He tags me like every day on LinkedIn of like, this is another AI lawsuit. Um, but yeah, so it's murky a little bit. There was a recent opinion by the Copyright Office where part of the work was made by AI and part of it was human, and they did grant copyright for the human part. In a similar vein, you can copyright a song that you made, and if you sample someone else's song, that doesn't give you the right to what they made. You exclude that from the copyright of your song. So that's a good way to think about how the Copyright Office might be approaching it. Asterisk, we don't really know what's going to happen in the federal government on any given day these days. So that's something to stay tuned about. Um, so practical tips, I would say if you're making the stuff, like let's say you're a songwriter, if you're writing the songs and you're just writing them on your own, you know that you can get a copyright in the underlying musical work and the sound recording. You can protect that. However, if you're making the artwork for your album through AI, you should not expect to own that and be able to market it. So while you're able to market your music and get royalties, etc., join organizations, get on the radio, you should not be selling merchandise with AI stuff on it. You're not going to be able to prevent people from copying your stuff. And again, it's coming down to your personal brand. It's just not a good policy going forward, even though we can't really predict what's going to happen with copyright law and AI. It's just not good policy to basically use public domain stuff as your own. So definitely try to involve human authorship where you can. Okay, so we're getting closer to the finish line here and want to have time for questions, so I'll go kind of fast here. Um, Although it's tough, and as I mentioned at the outset, it's something that doesn't breed creative energy to be tracking all this stuff and treating your creativity like a business. It does pay to do that. It pays in peace of mind, I think, first of all. But secondly, if you're using the entrepreneurial lessons that, any business class can teach you, there's a reason that the principles are there, right? And they overlap in an interesting way in, the artistic space. And it's really a joy to work with creative clients. And I think largely the attorneys in this space are an interesting group. So feel free to contact us. My firm, Amundsen Davis, would be a good option. There's also options of who to contact here. To some extent, the federal government has circulars that explain this stuff, but you might need, therapy after reading one of those. But LCA is a good organization. Lawyers for the Creative Arts. They're pretty active. Oh, that's good. They're pretty active in Chicago. I did a shameless plug for media and entertainment law monthly meetings. Um, you can meet people who are out there in the field that way. And I'll give another plug for Professor Lee. If you look up Ed Lee, he actually was involved with I think it was the Open Internet Project when he was at Stanford Law, and he's been honestly just a huge advocate for freedom of expression. He taught my copyright class in law school. I was a research assistant for him in a music copyright paper that he did, and I follow his work really closely, and I would suggest following him. Okay, so then here's my contact info and Molly's. So, Mark, I don't know if we want to open it up to questions now. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. I'm going to
Yeah,
stop the share now.
thank you for that presentation. Yeah, like I was saying before, I'm just so interested in the AI aspect of it, particularly. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to use the Q&A. Um, we'll hang out for just a little bit to see if any come in. I don't see any right now, but that's okay. And I will send out the slides to everyone who's registered. So maybe if you have questions after, their email contact info is going to be there as well.
Yeah, please feel free to reach out. And then, so this is Professor Lee's map that I think I can put it in the chat, right? See. Yeah, wait, everyone. So yeah, so this is his website. My Kent professor, again, I'm pretty biased towards, oh, we have a question. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Professor Lee's site is chatgpt.com, and that is really what it is.
Okay, here's great. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording actually. We don't generally record the Q&A in case people have like sensitive questions. We want people to feel free to ask those, so I'm gonna stop that.